And just when I thought that 14th and final roster spot, even though they have 2 open roster spots, it looks like right now Daryl Morey is saying that they'll probably leave the 1 open like we talk about often here on the show. Just when I thought we might have a shot, Derek Bodner, Kyle Neubeck, I'm Devon Givens, Brianna here producing as well. Thought we might have had a shot to fill that final one, get a minimum
Get
deal,
Devon a contract,
get us
baby.
a contract, and no. We got to get reports from Keith Pompey speaking on Tyrese Bertans, a possibility as a 6'10 shooter to possibly join the Philadelphia 76ers with some interest level there. Derek, I really thought that now I'm a year in.
Yeah.
Conversations
Rothman
with
has
Daryl
helped
Morey.
you out with your recovery.
Rothman, absolutely. All my scans and everything came through pretty well over there. Thought it was happening for us,
I
man.
don't want to be rude, but you don't come even close to clearing the Kyle Neubeck
I was going to say,
height
you're
test.
not making my roster, buddy, unfortunately.
Not even on the 14th.
Maybe the Blue Coats.
Whatever works. I've had some tryouts with them too.
You and ZB are out. I'm sorry. I love you both, but you're out.
Yeah, man. Well, look, we're here today again to talk about, because that is the news that's out there today. Keith Pompey of the Inquirer, Inquirer.com, reporting that the Sixers may have some interest in shooting forward, shooting big, Tyrese Bertans. We brought his name up a bunch.
Shooting forward is actually a good positional designation for him.
And I'm also making sure I stay away from,
because he's not small, and he doesn't have power,
and he doesn't do anything
shooting
else.
forward.
He doesn't do anything else. Come on the show, Tyrese, once you get back over here after your Olympic run. But Brianna's here, all of you in the chat. And we're hanging out with you on this Thursday. But with the interest level there, we've discussed his name before. There are other names that we've talked about that are also left available that are now going to go into the month of August. As we approach August, we are August 1st right now. This is when we saw the Kelly Oubre name go down. We see names all around the league sign late with teams and join those rosters, and plenty of them playing in the Olympics right now. But Tyrese Bertans is an interesting one because, one, Kyle, he does not fit the rebounding part that we speak about when we talk about front court players. He is a forward who does not rebound, but he does shoot. He's a specialist. We talk about specialists and how now we're at the point where, hey, we don't need to look in that direction as often as we used to. But now that we're talking about the 14th man on the roster, league minimum, you mentioned, I'll let you say the name that you talked about when we were walking in the building, who is now off the board completely, of why this may be of some interest, not only for possibly us here, but also all of you out there. That's right, Martian. Short kings get no love. But I'll take it. It's all right. I'm comfortable
when
in my own
the sport
skin.
is played 10 feet in the air, that's,
Well, and when half of the defense is putting your hand up and trying to stop your shot.
I'm shooting from long distance. I don't have to worry about all that. But Kyle, when you look at Tyrese Bertans on August 1st.
I will say, if it was a rebounding contest, you might beat Bertans. You might actually beat him. I would put money on you.
I'm in there.
Yeah.
Me and Jared McCain. All right, Kyle, what do you think? Tyrese Bertans, different now from what we were talking about before versus right now, 14th roster spot potentially. Some other names that could go along with him, but him specifically with the shooting and the fit on this team.
Okay, so first you brought up a player who's off the board. One of the reasons that I suppose at this point I have to entertain the idea of Tyrese Bertans is that one of the top guys we've talked about, Gordon Hayward, literally retired. Rather than sign a deal with an NBA team. He said, you know what? I'm looking at my options. I'm considering a minimum deal. And I'm considering actually no thanks.
Yeah.
Actually. So
well, at least he didn't reject the Sixers.
No
he just rejected the whole damn sport. It feels a little less personal.
So when Hayward goes off the board, that was one of those, what I would consider like multi-skill, slightly versatile, has some passing skill still, despite the issues that he has, where you say, okay, I would prioritize someone like that before, any specialized skill, whether that's rebounding, whether that's shooting, just because you can put him in a variety of situations and Hayward can come in and give you something, or at least in theory. Well, now he's going to be hanging out at home with his wife and his kids. And I want to say he's like a big League of Legends guy or like some kind of video game guy. So enjoy your retirement, Gordon Hayward. But I say all that to say,
nice career.
Now you do have to consider someone like Tyrese Bertans, just because, one, it's the 14th spot on the roster, and you can't be too picky for a guy that more than likely is not going to play. But two, end of the day, shooting always matters. And I think shooting matters particularly for this team in the regular season, where all the warts that he has, and there are many, you brought up the rebounding, he is as close to a non-rebounder as you can get for a guy
he will accidentally get one or two a game.
Like 6'9", 6'10". The ball will come to him by some mystic force every once in a while. But when I say I love seeing guys go up, attack the ball, two hands, box people out, he does none of that. He's also a bad defender. He's not good on the ball. He's not good off the ball. But he is a quick trigger shooter. He's a guy that historically has not been like in the elite category of shooter just from the percentages. But the release is so quick and he's such a willing shooter that when you get into that, 39.5% type of range, and you have the quick release and the mentality to just like, I'm going to jack it every time I touch the ball, that's like playing off of, that's a major no diddy on that one.
That's why I said fired up.
If you are playing next to Joel Embiid, or even to a lesser extent, Andre Drummond, who he's going to be a paint-bound guy, they need floor spacing around it. You could certainly do worse than just getting a guy in Bertans who will shoot the hell out of the ball.
So I have a general belief that we overreact to minimum signings in 14th roster spots way more than we should. I have one exception to that, and that's the backup center. Because unlike a typical 14th roster spot, Tyrese Bertans might not play. A backup center is going to play every night. And when Joe's out, he's going to play a significant amount. So when they sign players like Montrezl Harrell or DeAndre Jordan, I nitpick that because they're going to actually have a consistent role, and you need to fill it with somebody competent. Other than that, I do think we make too much of, this minimum guy is flawed. Well, of course he is. That's why he's a minimum player.
Guy who might be your 14th man on the roster.
So I don't want to nitpick Bertans too much, but
what do you always say? Nothing matters except for what comes after the butt.
He's one of the worst rebounders in the league for his size. Don't distract me. I have a hard enough time speaking on my own. He's 6'10" with a 6'10" wingspan. He doesn't move his feet at all. He's got really, bad hips in terms of moving on the perimeter.
We're going to break the pause record for this, on this show today.
Show him that Dak Prescott thing
he doesn't protect the rim at all. He does absolutely nothing on defense useful. And he's a non-passer, barely even connective. He catches the ball, he shoots the ball.
He's got one thing on his mind, baby.
That's pretty much what he does. And it's one thing if he was 6'10" with that. Because, look, when you can launch 11 threes per 36 minutes like he does very consistently and shoot 39%, that's an elite skill. The percentage might not be super high, but on that volume and on that difficulty, the quickness of the release, the depth of the shots, I think that is a legitimately elite skill. And it's an elite skill that's really valuable. It would be a lot more valuable if he was 6'10" and actually played like he was 6'10". It's one thing to, is that shooting unique? Yeah, it's pretty unique, but you can get a reasonable facsimile of that from somebody who's 6'6", 6'7", and has more advanced skills everywhere else on the floor. And if the guy that 6'10" is not actually going to use that extra 3 or 4 inches of height, I would rather err on the side of versatility. Like Kyle was mentioning, somebody like Gordon Hayward. Now, obviously, Gordon Hayward opted out of the sport. He's not an option at this point.
It really is funny that we've spent... There's been a lot of talk about Gordon Hayward on this show. He makes a lot of sense. Let's see if he'd be willing to take that deal. And ultimately, he just said, you know what? I'm going to go...
I was even bringing him up as a free trade
I'm going to go buy a new
candidate.
gaming mouse and a new ultra-wide monitor and just hang out in my basement instead.
So, I guess just kind of capping this off. Would I complain too much? No, because it's a 14th roster spot and he has an elite skill. And like Kyle said, in the regular season, that could be useful. That could help make Joel Embiid's life a little bit easier on offense. On defense, he's going to make it much more difficult. But I just have to believe that there's probably a better option out there. He's legitimately a power forward in name only. Shooting forward is maybe the best descriptor, and I'm definitely using that if they sign him.
Please do. You have my blessing on that one. And as far as I go, I would have fun with these guys in general because I knew how they felt when we would go through the whole free agency conversation after the big names came off the board, after the big trades went down. Davis Bertans was a name that I would throw out there just because of the shooting, because he was a shooting forward and one that we would talk about, okay, you have all these other things on the roster, but you don't really have the outside shooting outside of Maxey, Eric Gordon, and of whatever Paul George is, of course, going to bring to the table in this environment. But they've since put things together, drafting Jared McCain. If that translates, then you have another person there to do that. But again, when you look at somebody at 6'10", coming in this late in the game, and knows what his role is. One of the things that when we were talking to Kyle and he was bringing up Gordon Hayward is he going to know what his role is at this stage of his career? Davis Bertans knows what his role is. Fill that seat on that last end of the bench, and when you come in, fire it up. And that's exactly what he does. Now, in the event that he does get in there in the game, could you still be getting that guy that you saw from time to time with the Dallas Mavericks that Derek was talking about, Kyle and I were talking about when he was with the Wizards, and he would average double figures, shooting close to 40% from beyond the three-point line? I don't know if that's still in there, but I don't even know if they're even playing in the Olympics right now to see what the sample size would be in the moment where people can watch him go 5 for 7 from 3, hit 3 in a row and say, sign that guy because he's available, and the reports out there that they're interested. But when we're looking at this spot right here, you're looking at the shooting in this particular case, or a guy who can rebound the basketball a little bit or play defense and not be a traffic cone on the other end. So putting him in this spot, in this 14th spot, at this, again, stage of the game, I don't have a problem with it because you know what's going to happen? He might, in one of those games during the regular season, game number 35, when guys are on the bench and he's in there and he knocks down a couple of George Niang type three-pointers to swing it a little bit and help the Sixers in the run that they have. And that's what we typically talk about when that 13th or 14th man get in the game and do just that.
We're going to talk about Niang for a different reason coming up. I feel like Niang has so much more natural swagger that I like.
Oh my God.
I trust him more. It's really stupid, right? Like we could probably put the numbers next to each other, just pure shooting, and they would be.
It's the eye test.
They would be similar. Yeah, but George Niang, I just believe he's going to make shots.
The only reason I brought that up is because the shot went in. I wouldn't even compare Niang to Davis Bertans because to your point, I don't even think it's close.
That's one of those things that just will not show up if you're trying to scroll through, the stats page on NBA.com or Basketball Reference. It's like, yeah, look, this guy shoots high 30s from 3. Bertans, I feel like he just has this kind of, I will say bad energy. Like I don't know. There's something off about him.
He's got that face where you can just.
That's it. Maybe I'm just looking
when
at
it's not
him.
working out for him.
The offseason where we're analyzing guys' faces.
When it's not working for him, man, you see him, you see the face, and you're like, ah. And then when they were, I don't know if it was a qualifying, but I just remember at the beginning of the exhibition play for the Olympics, and they asked him about being released by the Charlotte Hornets, and he said, I could not care less. I'm worried about this team right here, which he should be because he's getting ready to play a basketball game. But that's the type of vibe you're talking about, Kyle. I think you're talking about when I see him. Yes.
I think there's more. It's like the dog factor or whatever, right? I think Niang separate. Now, look, there are also some other ancillary skills
competed.
that I think
whether
Niang
George
has.
could do it or not, he competed.
I think
he
George
didn't
more
compete enough on the glass, though.
Well,
he more consistently put it on the floor
true.
and had that little push shot that he could make, and he could do some connective stuff.
He fouled the hell out of somebody if he got beat because he's like, look, I'm not giving up the 2.
I've got a funny George story about him talking about his athletic limitations that I'll tell you off air.
Okay.
It's an off-air story.
All right. But George, the stuff to your point, Kyle, his 20 minutes, he earns that 20 minutes because he competes in those 20 minutes as best as he can.
Now, Ron's he's got that face as an all-time quote. I don't know what it is.
It's just like
you look at Bertans and there's just something like,
but
I don't know. He's got no sauce. Like there's just nothing. There's nothing there that I can.
So our buddy, of
maybe
course,
it's just he's played on all these losing ass teams, and it's like, this guy's kind of a stinky
I always
loser.
like how Anthony, when we talk about the face people or whatever it is, I always like how Anthony Gargano would say this. He would say, he has fleas. And so when you talk about the dog factor, Anthony would say, that guy has fleas. And from afar, it looks like, to your point, yeah, that guy has fleas. And is he going to dog it out there? Is he going to be disgruntled because he's not playing? And meanwhile, he's on his 7th team of not playing, and it's for a reason, and all of those flaws that are in there. That being said, if they sign him, like Derek said, Okay, it's the 14th man in August. He's going to be in training camp. We'll see if he makes the team or not.
Yeah.
And you go from there. And there are other names that we have to discuss that maybe fit a little bit better because we're talking about the toughness, the rebounding, other aspects, other attributes that they bring to the game. Maybe not as good of a shooter, but a guy who can shoot potentially. May stick his nose in there, of course, on the rebounding side of things. Stick his nose in there with the toughness to help out the team in that way and also be a vocal leader, possibly in the locker room. We'll talk about those types of players when we get back on the other side here on the PHLY podcast as we hang out talking about Tyrese Bertans and the face. Well, if you're a football fan, we're basketball fans. Obviously, we love the other sports also. But if you're a football fan and you're getting ready for Houston and Chicago, Kyle, Derek, we got football tonight. Did you know that? We had a little football, little preseason action.
I had no idea. This is the first time I'm learning about this.
If you want to bet on the game, you got to go to our new partner, our new friends. They are never ordinary. They are Bet365, and they have 90 million users worldwide. Bet365 live streams 780,000 events a year. The early payout offers across the NBA, NFL, NHL, and MLB. If you want to do that for your baseball team, even though they're reeling a little bit, they're still very good. Don't panic. Everybody hits this little skid during the season. But also, you can't help yourself and you want to jump in there on the first bit of action you get for the NFL. You do that for the Chicago-Houston game tonight. Right here at Bet365, which has pioneered live in-game betting. And today, Bet365 offers the widest range of games and markets available for live in-game betting across 78 sports. All right, got to open an account. Here's the offer for you. At Bet365, we don't do ordinary, folks. We believe every sport should be epic. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets. Bonus bets, when you do that, when you bet just $5. Use the code PHLY365 just to sign up, deposit your $10, and claim your offer. The Boost, they're fantastic as always. When you have just not an ordinary boost, you have every day power up the odds on hundreds of bets to give you a chance to win more, over 10,000 boosts every month. Always love those. You add it to your parlay. Bang, you're feeling good about it. In the NBA,
I can't wait to bet some Davis Bertans rebound under. So
well,
how there's a prop for you.
How about this? The early NBA early parlay offer. You can bet Davis Bertans with Joel Embiid, whatever you want to do. Get your straight bets paid out or parlay selections marked as a winner when your team goes up by 20 points because he hit that three-pointer that you're talking about.
Early cash out.
Download the Bet365 app. Use code PHLY365 when you sign up. And again, check out our boosts to see why it's never ordinary to bet at Bet365. Must be 21 plus and physically located in Pennsylvania. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER.
What if I'm spiritually located somewhere else? Is that okay?
Spiritually, I think that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you're okay. And
I'll
also
have to run that by Bet365.
Also, the other good thing, spiritually, you know I'm spiritually better?
Because of our good friends at Rothman.
Rothman Orthopedics, man. I cleared that 1 year. Went out on the basketball court on Monday. I was feeling pretty good. Told me I can now play some 3-on-3 basketball. So Al and Winona telling me, no, I can't help myself. Please forgive me. I have to get out there and play. And I do so, again, because of our good friends from Rothman Orthopedics who took care of me with my latest injury last summer, and that was my torn Achilles. Took care of it, got the surgery done, rehab a few weeks later. I was right on top of it thanks to Rothman Orthopedics. Even though I was a little worried from time to time with certain things, they made me feel comfortable. And Rothman, with 200-plus fellowship-trained physicians, they subspecialize in specific areas of the body and a multitude of orthopedic services, including the knee and the ankle for me and many of you, elbow, foot, hand, wrist, sports medicine, a total number of things that if you have an issue, you can go to my good friends at Rothman Orthopedics, proudly serving dozens of communities across Pennsylvania and New Jersey with 30-plus convenient offices, urgent cares, and walk-in centers as well. It's not just the volume of customers, of course, and people that they care for, over 255,000 of new patients and consults that Rothman is most proud of, but instead it's the commitment to improving each and every one of those patients' lives through their service and care, myself included. So if you need to go to a spot and you need to get checked out, MRI, X-ray, anything along those lines, maybe even a surgery after you get the scans back. Rothman Orthopedics, they specialize in orthopedics, and you Visit rothmanortho.com/PHLY to learn more and make an appointment today. All right. Davis Bertans hitting that shot, winning you that over 20-point total on Bet365. Maybe it's not him, though. Maybe it's another.
I do want to say, after we did dump on him quite a bit there, I think we probably all are like, yeah, if that's the 14th guy, that's fine. He brings a signature skill to the table, and for a guy in that roster spot, that's going to be fine.
And I do really value guys with high volume, accurate 3-point shooting who have gravity, especially on a team with Joel Embiid, but just in general in the NBA. So yeah, would I talk myself into it? You could talk me into it, but like, would I like it if he did literally anything else on a basketball court? Yeah, I'd prefer that too. I would love him 5 games a year when he drops like 6 threes and wins you a game, and he would drive me insane a lot of the other times.
Let's just say he won't have the same impact as Kelly Oubre as a late signing in the process like Oubre did last season. But if he were brought in, it might be something that's a decent enough fit for late in the process overall. But another name that was also mentioned in the story, we've discussed him with Keith Pompey's story at the Inquirer.com, was Marcus Morris. We talk about him a lot. Hometown guy. We had Mike Morak in the other day talking about of course, talking about the Danny Rumpf Classic that begins tonight. You might see Marcus, you might see Markieff out there. They typically have a team. And maybe you see him again, Kyle, if it's not Bertans, possibly in the Sixers uniform again.
They're Chuck Ellis guys, right?
Yes.
Long time, yeah.
Mm-hmm. With Lou Williams and so many others that Chuck has worked out, of course, as an NBA trainer. But, I mean, again, here's a guy that one more time that we discuss often for a very, very good reason.
Well, so one, I would say if there was real interest from this, I don't want to say that they're not interested in Marcus at all, but it does feel like, to me, this is just my opinion. I'm not reporting anything. So we do have to do the Brian Windhorst don't aggregate this sometimes now. I've been learning the hard way. I feel like he would have been signed already if he's at the top of the priority list, right? Because I don't think he's getting more than the minimum anywhere at this point. And I think in his heart of hearts, based on talking to him, watching him last season, wants to play in Philadelphia, like really enjoyed the experience of playing for his hometown team. I certainly wouldn't be opposed to him as this type of guy, right? Somebody that I thought was this deep into his career, like has gained some wisdom about the rigors of being an NBA bench player, and when he was called upon last year, produced a lot more than I was expecting coming in. Like, my expectation when they traded for him, based on what I had heard on both ends of that trade, was he wasn't coming here to play. And then he kind of immediately finds a way into the rotation in that role we're talking about with Bertans, where it's like, listen, you're on the floor with Joel Embiid and these backup units. You just stand in a spot and get ready to shoot when the ball comes your way. Marcus is certainly overqualified to do that. Was up and down with the shot at times, but he's a good catch and shoot player. I wish that he was a little bit younger, because younger Marcus Morris is a great fit on any team, but definitely on this team where he's tough. He was a good defender. Like, he was somebody with some versatility between
the Boston
3 and
Celtics,
the 4.
Marcus.
That version of Marcus. Yeah. That was a guy that could hang in some high-level playoff series. Now he's tailed off there quite a bit in recent seasons, and so that's kind of the tough part with him, is like, can you get enough out of not just the shooting, but also that like one dribble pull up, attack the closeout, hit the mid-range type of deal. Like, he can still do that to a reasonably high degree for a guy in his mid-30s, veteran role player. I wouldn't hate it, but I'm skeptical that they're in the Marcus market, unless just like everything kind of peters out here.
Yeah, I mean, the only reason that he would be waiting is if he thinks there's more than a minimum out there. But I think at this point you have to be a little bit realistic. Like, there's teams aren't spending those. The hard cap triggers with a lot of these mid-levels have prevented teams from really utilizing.
And if they're going to spend them, it'll be on a younger guy where they can justify to themselves, like, hey, we're going to take a punt on this player and maybe we get some untapped upside out of them.
Do you take Marcus over Bertans?
I probably would, honestly.
I would.
Just because of we're talking about, like, somebody mentioned aura in the chat after I was doing the, like, George Niang's got just more swag than Bertans. I think there's something to that, like the toughness component with Marcus, especially he has played in a lot of high level playoff games, right? Like, hasn't been on a ton of deep runs, but has been in the playoffs and played in enough playoff games that I feel better about him despite being older than Bertans. I would feel better about him coming in to play, a spot 8 to 10 minutes in a playoff game than I would Bertans, because I think Bertans could very quickly just like give the other team 10 points. Now, he could also in the regular season, I think, has a higher ceiling with the shooting stuff, and maybe that's what you shoot for, because frankly, if we're worried about the 14th guy on the roster playing playoff minutes, that something has probably gone wrong. But yeah, I think I would take Marcus over him.
Certainly Marcus is a better rebounder. That off the dribble game that you mentioned, the mid-range game, is better than Bertans. They're both really bad defenders. And I got on Marcus for his defense a lot last year. He's, I think, really bad. And when you bring up toughness, at times that'll show up, but defensively a lot of times it does not. That being said, he's a better defender than Bertans. Bertans is a better shooter, and he gets that shot off under more duress. A deeper release. He can shoot it contested more than Marcus can, and just at a higher volume than Marcus can. So that does, and I think the way Kyle phrased it is probably right. In the regular season, you might get more out of Bertans just because that spacing and what it'll open up for Embiid specifically in those bench units. And he's probably right also that if you're worried about either of them playing the playoffs, things have gone pretty horribly wrong. And now that being said, things go pretty horribly wrong pretty regularly here in Philadelphia.
Have you guys watched the Sixers ever?
You do have to consider that. But certainly there's a better chance that Marcus can hold up in the playoffs, even if it's just moving, shifting the percentages a couple of points in either direction, because none of them should be playing.
Well, last time we saw him in the playoffs with the Cleveland Cavaliers in their elimination game, albeit elimination, Donovan Mitchell wasn't playing. There were talks about Darius Garland basically being checked out. And he was the one that was carrying the weight and ended up with 21, 22 in that game when he knocked down a few
no fear. Threes. And that's kind of what we're talking about, right?
All. Yeah, he's not worried about the moment. He's been in the moment. Last season, he was in the system of Nick Nurse. From everything that we heard, you were there more than we were, certainly, that he liked playing at home. He was able to do those things. His voice carries in the locker room, even with the respect that he has from Joel Embiid as the franchise player. The same thing with Tyrese Maxey. And Marcus playing, I don't know, was he in L.A. with Paul George? I don't remember with the Clippers. But just in general, the guy's been around for a while. So he's seen a lot. He's done a lot. Yeah, the impact might be there with Davis Bertans and swinging the game if he is in the game during the regular season. But if we're talking postseason, if he's there for the entire year and makes it to the postseason roster, yeah, last time we saw him, we saw a guy go off for 20 plus. Does Davis Bertans have that in him anymore to do something like that? And I don't remember the last time I saw that from Bertans versus seeing that in that final game for the Cleveland Cavaliers for Marcus Morris. So I would lean Morris and bringing up that toughness part. It may not show on the defensive side, but it might just work out where that toughness shows in the locker room and just his voice carrying once again to his teammates, where that toughness means a little bit more also there, because he physically can't contribute like he did when he was with the Boston Celtics in his prime, the way that Kyle was explaining. So I would lean Morris. And I think that would be an easy call for me on that one, because even though we're looking at the shooting of Bertans and coming in and swinging that game, I would hope Eric Gordon does the same thing. Maybe Reggie Jackson with that same shooting. Not going to put that on Jared McCain, but the shooting is there with Maxey.
I'll put it a little bit on Jared McCain.
Well, I don't know if he's going to play.
We don't know that he's going to play.
Yeah. So that's the only reason I didn't bring him up versus Reggie Jackson and Eric Gordon. Just thinking more of the shooting is there. So if I can get those other intangibles and help win a game for Marcus Morris, then I will feel more than okay about that than the Davis Bertans piece.
I do worry a little bit about the shooting. When you've got Kelly and Caleb's streaky, but he's somebody you can help off of at times. Mm-hmm. You've got those two in the lineup around Joel Embiid and around another non-shooting center in Drummond. I do worry a little bit about the spacing. It's not like at the top of my concern list, but I would certainly like adding another sharpshooter.
Is still probably
and rebounding and all that. Yeah. But it's not a non-concern for me. Like, I could certainly see this team being like a...
But it's not going to swing your choice of Morris versus Bertans, is it? Over having, again, like when we did the projection of the lineups.
I don't think it'd be crazy to say Bertans is a shooter I trust more or has a higher ceiling as a shooter, and that if you're splitting hairs on the 14th roster spot, I don't think it's crazy to say lean that guy over Marcus, who some of the reasons that we're favoring him are scenarios like him playing playoff minutes you really don't want to get to in the first place. Right?
Absolutely.
Yep. A lot of his...
For either of them.
Exactly.
A lot of his positives over Bertans, he's not actually good at. He's just better than Davis Bertans.
Yeah.
So it's like, do you want to pass on that elite skill for somebody who's kind of just okay at everything? And honestly, I don't think Marcus is anywhere close to okay on defense. I think it's an argument either way, which is why both of them are vying for a 14th roster spot and not a regular rotation spot.
So if we were putting together a 2K lineup or the player and we would start going, how high would Marcus be on defense? How high would it be on putting the ball on the floor and rebounding and all that?
You're not talking about 80s here.
Yeah, right, exactly. But then when we get the Bertans and the shooting, it's still going to be relatively high.
No, Bertans is like a 90, 92, 93 shooter.
Yeah. So also, while we were talking...
Marcus is getting shortchanged a little bit there.
I think Marcus.
He's been a pretty... I'm talking about the shooting specifically. I think in recent seasons, his volume is lower than Bertans, but I think he's been in that like high 30s, low 40s
and
for the most part.
Man, we need the Marcus Morris moment of the night back.
I like the Philly guys being around.
I like that, man.
Marcus was fun to be around. So I root for me always. Remember?
That's why I need the Marcus Morris moment of the night back.
Kyle Lowry in there. He's back this year. Marcus Morris was a pleasant guy to deal with. And it's, I like the old veteran guys who are like, they'll also say some stuff too. Like Marcus he had a couple of great moments, like talking about the experience of playing in Philly, but also just the occasional like real talk, straight talk type of moment. Like I appreciate that kind of stuff.
Marcus would be better.
He's way better on
100%,
on that front. So for that reason, give me Marcus.
You guys see Pasechnik's?
Yeah, I was
going
to get there, but go ahead.
No, go ahead. He signed a two-way contract with the Milwaukee Bucks.
Yeah.
Pasechnik's?
Yeah.
Are you taking him
Brian
over
Colangelo legend?
Yeah, you taking Pasechnik's over by Bertans and Morris?
No, I will take both Morris and Bertans over Pasechnik's.
I like the occasional Marcus Morris technical because sometimes I think that just gets things going a little bit. Of get a little shove the guy, get off me kind of thing.
I like having at least one guy on the bench who might fight somebody.
He's grumpy in a good way. I like that grumpy.
I like that. Kelly would probably fight somebody too.
Oh yes, he would. And Kyle. So you have three of them right there that'll work out for you. So you don't have to worry about the other guys getting ejected.
Kelly might take it a little bit too far, especially with the extracurriculars with the refs.
But you need at least one. You need at least one guy who's willing to go too far.
You don't need one guy doing this in the middle of a late game.
That's okay.
I disagree.
That's all right.
That was one of my favorite things that Kelly did.
It was great. It just wasn't wise. That's all.
Well, he didn't get it. He didn't get suspended. He just got fined.
No, but they remember that.
Yeah, I was going to say, probably didn't have a reputation.
He didn't get the calls later for like 2 straight games where we were sitting there monitoring that. When we come back, we'll talk about a guy who could shoot the basketball, good vibes in the locker room, and I think we'll talk about why he has good vibes in the locker room.
People that I do,
absolutely.
So that's why we like him.
We'll do that next, and we got to start with Kyle on that one on the PHLY Sixers podcast.
First up, we want to tell you about TrueMark, specifically TrueMark Financial's Rewards Visa credit card. Earn rewards for each purchase using TrueMark Financial's Rewards Visa credit card and redeem them for travel and retail gifts. Build credit through timely payments and low credit utilization. Enjoy fraud protection with features like zero liability. We also want to tell you about saving options with TrueMark Financial. TrueMark has a traditional savings account, which is a basic savings account offering a place to deposit funds, earn interest, and withdraw money as needed. There's also a money market account, which combines features of savings and checking accounts offering higher interest rates and limited check writing capabilities, easy access to your money when you need it. And finally, there is a certificate, which is a fixed-term deposit account with a predetermined interest rate and maturity date, offering higher interest rates for locking in funds for a specific period. TrueMark Financial is federally insured by the NCUA and is an equal opportunity lender. For more information, visit truemark.com/PHLY.
And guys, we love our friends at Rite Aid. We've been talking a lot about the LO market recently. I always want to say that in like a terrible British accent, but I'm not going to subject anybody to that, especially not our great partners at Rite Aid. Yellow Market line includes a ton of great snacks, candy, pantry items. They have peach rings, Starlight mints, gummy butterflies, sour gummy worms. We've had it all here. We got a big old box that unfortunately our friend and coworker Vince has not restocked after our greedy butts ate everything. But the candy will be back at some point, we presume. There are also trail mixes. Those trail mixes have vitamins, minerals, healthy fats, fiber, and protein. So if you're not like me or Devon or Derek and you want to do something good for your body or better for your body, get those proteins and some healthy snacking in you, they have options for you too. But there's also popcorn, beef jerky, granola. And then you got your, the stuff that's in your pantry that you might need when you're cooking, seasonings, a little bit of honey from the Yellow Market. Honey is a really underrated cooking tool. If you have not used it before, get some honey from Yellow Market, put that in the next thing you cook and see what happens. So if you have a snack attack, get Yellow Market delivered same day or buy online or even just pick it up in the store. Go to riteaid.com/shop to order.
So I was looking, well, we all love candy. Got to have the candy. We need more candy back in the studio.
Listen, the amount of candy we
really
have consumed,
don't. I have zero self-control when
the
it comes
amount
to
of candy
stuff.
that's been consumed in this office since we started the company less than a year ago would probably kill a small child if they ate the same amount of sugar.
But you say no, we don't, and yes, you do, because even when we don't have it, you're walking over there looking for something.
I am. I told you I have no. So if it's there, I will eat.
You might as well be there for you to have it when you take that walk over there.
Look,
gotta have it.
I love the candy, which is why I'm okay if Vince lapses on buying it. That's all. That's all.
Right.
It's not Rite Aid's problem. It's my problem. I understand I have no self-control, but you have to know yourself.
It's a good problem. I'm gonna have some candy later on. I was looking on Twitter while you were reading your the ad, and 76ers put out a tweet, of course, a couple of hours ago. Tyrese Maxey working out in the gym.
Oh, more accusations that he's on the roids, on the juice.
Photos from Tyrese Maxey in there getting his work in.
The NBA's going to drug test him again.
He did say that too.
Yeah, he said everyone was making comments and the league
they had to go check him out.
That was funny.
Well, he does look like he's that. Well, I mean, he's standing there with some dumbbells in his hands.
He's putting lots of work in.
He's putting
lots
of work
Tyrese.
in. No question about it. The guy we need to talk about now when we speak of Bertans and his shooting, Marcus Morris and his shooting as well. One of the guys that some people were sad to see go. Others were like, yeah, get him out of here, put him in that minivan and get him going. Well, the minivan got a big payday in Cleveland. He was a
friend of the pod.
Where he stuck his face into the camera during one of the post-game live hits. Kyle was at the arena after the game when they played Cleveland, and he said, what's up? Actually, I didn't even tell you guys. I ran into George last month. Was it last month? Yeah, I ran into George last month.
At an undisclosed location.
At an undisclosed location. And it was good to see him. Chatted up a little bit. And but he made an appearance on the podcast. And he has some things to say. And he finally explained why every time the Sixers played the Nets, that he was very physical with Ben Simmons and would be in his face with Ben Simmons and basically frustrated with Ben Simmons. Kyle, could you share what was going on with George Niang and telling people off and ingratiating himself yet again with the Sixers fan base?
So George was on the road tripping pod with, I believe it's Richard Jefferson, Channing Frye, and Allie Clifton are the team there. Had George on to talk about a bunch of things, but Richard Jefferson essentially asked him, like, you just have one of those guys that you just can't stand in the NBA. Like, there's always at least one, right? That they get under your skin for whatever reason. And certainly, like, George is a great guy to ask this question because he loves to get under people's skin. So when you do that, you obviously invite back a lot of fire back and forth, trash talking, whatever.
And I will say, when he was asked this question, it did not take him long to come to his answer.
And George tried to at first, hold back. And he even said, I actually feel bad about it at this point, but it's the Ben Simmons thing. And the larger quote was basically like, look, I came here in some part to play with Ben, right? Like, I looked at how he played. He's a slasher, a driving, slash and kick type of player. I'm the sort of guy who can play off of him and really reap the benefits and turn what was... They used like part of the mid-level or part of the biannual to sign George if I remember
correctly.
correctly.
He was just over $3 million, but it was a little more than
the Sixers.
Yeah,
it was the biannual.
It was the biannual. Yeah. So he wasn't on a big deal, and this was like a prove it. Like, okay, I can get some more money elsewhere after I play with Ben,
which he did,
and then he did. But so Ben doesn't show up, and George is unhappy with it. Then Ben does show up, and George, as the rest of the team, is under instructions like, hey, try to make this a hospitable environment.
Be nice.
And so he says,
rub his back.
Now here's where we get to George's quote. He says, quote, then he was walking around the facility. You'd be like, what's up, man? Because, he'd be like, he does a nod, just like nods at you, doesn't say anything. And George says, and that's when I was like, fuck this dude. If I get an opportunity to play against this dude, I'm just going to be an asshole. There's like, don't do dumb shit while you're out there. And I was like, that's out the window. I was pissed. And it's such a great way to encapsulate why so many people had lost respect for Ben, not just in that situation, but over the years where it was like, he did, if there was a problem he ran into, part of the reason support dropped off for him as quickly as it did is not just down to you had the non-dunk against Trae Young, or you didn't shoot over these years. It's like you never really learned how to or cared about ingratiating yourself to people, right? Like JJ Redick always used to refer to him as the man behind the glass, like that he just no emotions. And look, there are times when that's an advantage in pro sports, right? Where people ride the roller coaster and being able to stay even keel and kind of away from all the nonsense can be a big advantage. But with Ben, that was like an all the time thing where he just did not really let people in. And then he gets to this situation where it was one thing for him to, I think you could argue certainly that he was justified to be mad at Doc Rivers, to some extent to be mad at Joel, given the comments that happened. There's certainly broader context for the Joel comments after that loss. The Doc ones were horrible. If you want to come in and be a dick to Doc after that, I get it. That's human nature. That's something that Doc would have had to take a long time to repair that relationship. To be like that to George, who just like came in some part to play with you, it's just like, you're just not being a good person at that point. Like, if you want to cause a fuss and be a bad guy to the people that you think deserve the scorn, I get and could even in some weird way support that. Like, you're standing on, what upset you and you're going to keep moving forward that way. Okay. But that just, I understand why George would be pissed off.
So do I.
And he also said, he's like, look, with Ben out of the picture, like, it's easy to see now, oh, Tyrese being elevated was great for the Sixers and all that. At the time, you go from, hey, you have an all-star point guard starter or whatever to
like Shake Milton
or Tyrese Maxey. And Tyrese had been a spot player the year before. So that's it. It completely changed the setup of the team. It ends up working out for them over the long term because of how it allowed Tyrese to make the jump that he did. But
none of us knew they would get there, including his teammates. And the thing for me with that is, too many times, and George Niang explained this in the conversation, and Kyle just laid it out, is that, Derek, when you have so many of these types of players that are minimum contract or just above, some exception that he gets, they're on shorter deals. Maybe the second year isn't even guaranteed. If it might be a team option.
Yeah.
And you're trying your best. When you are sitting down with your agent, you're trying to find the best fit. It's not just the money either. It's the fit, because if the fit is right, then the money is going to be there for you on that next part.
These guys.
So when you have a guy who is so versatile like Ben Simmons for what he does, and Embiid gets the double team, Ben Simmons finds and creates for these guys around the perimeter to get these shots off, he's waiting for him to be back, for him to get out there so he can take advantage of that while he's on the floor. And if he does that, Ben Simmons plays, he knocks down these shots at a close to 39% clip, helps them advance to the Eastern Conference Finals or something. Maybe George gets a contract and stays here because he's like, look, what am I leaving for? These guys, I'm eating because of them. Now I'm getting paid because of it. So, hey, this makes the most sense. I'm going to do that. So when he's messing, now we're talking about, hey, we don't count their money, but guess what? He's counting his money because that guy affects his money.
Now, thankfully, playing next to James Harden worked out okay.
That worked out pretty good for him, yeah. And the fact that, well, again, worked out perfectly for him in the long run, because that was also another partner that he paired up with that, by the way, James Harden trusted the hell out of him to find him behind the perimeter to shoot that basketball. When they would run that pick and pop, George would get some pretty good looks from behind the three-point line. So I fully understand why George Niang feels the way he feels, said, yeah, okay, right now I feel a little bad saying it, but deep down that was a real thing. And he's got his money and it worked out because of James Harden. But in that moment, absolutely you understand why George Niang felt that way. Yeah, I mean, there's two things George cares about. Getting that next contract, which, look, he is as flawed of a player as you can find that will get into a rotation. Like, there's outside of being tall and having an elite shot, he has nothing else that he really offers. So he needs a space to get that shot off to look good on the floor and get that next contract. So you understand that Simmons, it's not like Simmons was a small part of, like, when you're evaluating a team to come to in your fit. No. Like, he was a primary
foundational piece of the team.
Yes, yeah. And especially getting out in early offense, something that Niang thrives in when he's able to get down the floor and get that shot, and just creating space and a kick out and having a really good passer. That's something that George thrives on. So that was a big deal for him, and competing. And look, like we all mentioned, it ended up working out because you ended up getting not only more reps for Tyrese Maxey, and because of that, you now have a better sense of what he could do and how you build a team when James Harden leaves. But you then got James Harden for that year and a half, and that ended up being good for George. So I think long term, it was fine, but you understand why a competitor in that moment would feel the way he felt. I've given Ben probably more excuses than most in terms of how I think like that fear of failure was debilitating. I think he was just very non-confrontational and scared of confrontation. I think probably those interactions with George was Ben just not knowing how to react to something like that. But I also fully understand why somebody who is fighting for his NBA life and fighting for his next contract and fighting for a chance to make a deep playoff run would feel that way. It makes 100% sense. When the NBA is kind of screwed up in the fact that in order for a lot of these players to move when they're under contract, they have to make a scene. And I'm sympathetic towards that. But when you decide to take that action, there are going to be real repercussions in terms of your relationship with other players. And this is just one of those repercussions.
And that's where, so I don't want this to just be like the dump on Ben Simmons segment. I think that's a really important point, Derek, to focus on is like, as we've moved into what people generally refer to as like player empowerment era, right? That's the shorthand that gets used for guys demanding trades, guys teaming up, kind of, manipulating where they go around the league when they do ask out. I think one of the real negative consequences has not necessarily been for the teams, but these guys who are more of the fringe players, like the 8 through 15 guys on the roster, people who their spot in the league is situational, right? Like there are a lot of guys who are not in the NBA who are good enough to play in the NBA, but they just don't fit into, they can't be a George Niang and get 8 touches a game and make 5 threes or whatever. They're more of a, I need the ball in my hands, I need to run the offense. And so they go make a great living in, Europe or over in Japan or China or one of these countries, these big basketball countries around the world. But these guys who are in the NBA, who are fighting to stay in the NBA, that are on these type of contracts we're talking about that Niang was on when he came here, they sit and think very carefully about, they know the game, right? They're like, okay, if I'm George Niang, spot-up shooter who can occasionally put it on the floor, I can get this money probably from 10 to 12 different teams. Yeah. But I can only get this money and play somewhere that's going to help my career and help me in the future from maybe a couple teams. And those spots start to shrink and shrink and shrink. And so when you sign there under the pretext of, I'm coming to play with Joel and Ben and, go on down the list of the other guys who they're going to get, and one of those guys just says, nah, I'm good. Like that immediately is like, dude, what the hell? So I have a lot of sympathy, not just for George in this situation, but like when James Harden has forced his way out of places, when Anthony Davis forced his way out of New Orleans to go to the Lakers. Like you go through all these different examples of guys who have left situations, and you leave a bunch of other people who, to some degree, the future of their livelihood was staked on you. So it's a thing that gets swept under the rug to some degree because people care about the stars, right? And if you're a fan of a star player, it's like whatever that guy wants, he should be able to have. But you have at least some obligation to your guys that are there with you. That's the point of playing a team sport.
Imagine if Devon just one day decided he was going to run off to, middle of Kansas, and we had to lead a show again. Can you imagine how much that would impact our career? Imagine if we signed
contracts to do a show and then one of the people didn't show up for 3 months. Can you imagine?
Luckily, I wasn't signed yet. But, because the head nod thing also bothered me when George would explain that, because us being around Ben, you can see it and you can understand it. And you've been around people like that, and you also feel a certain way, like, what was that about? What's going on there? Why just a head nod? And that makes things a little bit more uncomfortable. And when you are, even though you may not be a vocal leader on your team in a way that we're talking about Marcus Morris or some of these other names, Tobias Harris for that matter, where he got had a good reputation in the locker room. You are still the leader of the team because you are a franchise player. So you have to carry yourself as such. So you might get some pushback in saying, well, it's not up to Ben Simmons to make George Niang money. Well, it kind of is, because you're supposed to carry yourself a certain way. And if you have team success, and if you find your shooters around the perimeter, he's going to benefit from that, from your pass, which is also going to help you get paid from what you do, get your all-NBA acknowledgement, your all-star acknowledgement, because of the assists that build up, because of the shots that this guy is making. Because, hell, we saw a lot of, yes, he has passed to Joel Embiid, but it wasn't a lot of bang, 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 let me get to the rim and dump it off to Embiid for an easy bucket. A lot of those assists became courtesy of him finding guys around the perimeter. So that's where the part for me was corny at the time for Ben Simmons, because it wasn't just, hey, I'm not a vocal leader and I'm just going to head nod because that's my personality. You're also a leader of the franchise, and you have to carry yourself as such, where you have to step out of yourself a little bit. Even if you don't like the guy, you're supposed to show up at work. And when we were talking about that at the time, showing up for work was big. Then the whole team wants to go fly out and meet up with them, and the whole stories that come behind that. Don't come out here. You were already out here. Why didn't you stop by? That's where you start to lose people, and you can understand why even some of the teammates who did not care for him felt the way that they did.
I mean, that's a great point. You've got to show up to work even when you don't like everyone. Like, Devon shows up and he hates my guts. You wouldn't know it on the show because that man's a professional.
You just come in and turn the mic on and talk.
I just come back to
just talk to Bree.
There's a difference between going at the organization, which I get it, going at teammates and disrespecting teammates. When those guys understand better than anybody that this is a business, right? Like, they understand. If you want to get out of there and you can look your guys in the eye and say, look, I have this, and this problem, you can still treat those guys with respect, have that understanding, do whatever you have to do between, you and Rich Paul causing some noise and whatever you're doing at practice, like whatever you need to do, those guys will understand. Just treat people with respect. It's a good way to go through life in general, but certainly when you're the star player or one of the most important people in an organization.
Yep, no question about it. Just to get off of that, and
can I just say, thank goodness for Tyrese Maxey.
Oh man,
just having this conversation makes me realize how much I appreciate that man.
On multiple levels.
I think we can say enough of how good of a guy he is.
HGH and all. I don't.
Oh, don't
lift the weights, man. Keep lifting the weights. Quickly before we step away, just a couple minutes on real fast, Derek. Team USA won yesterday. Joel Embiid did not play, did not start. It was a rest day, it was said to be for Joel Embiid. But Anthony Davis starts. They get the win. Adebayo off the bench with 18. They look pretty good. Anything you take from that other than, hey, the guy probably did need some rest?
Well, Rich brought this up on Twitter. They played like one game in 9 days, so he's probably pretty well rested.
No rest.
And look, I understand.
It's the summertime when he doesn't work. He still, even with 9 days off, needs some rest.
I also, Kerr's talking about matchups. It's South Sudan. You should be able to win pretty much irrespective of matchups.
He also was one of the best players against South Sudan the last time they played.
But he also already announced, too, that he was starting.
According to Ben Golliver, he's starting the next game. Yeah. I think probably the most charitable read is Joe struggled. They wanted to get a different look. Sometimes it's easier to just have a couple guys at each game who aren't going to play, just so everybody's getting 10 to 15 minutes rather than getting a couple. This was a natural time to sit Joel Embiid. He's back in the starting lineup. Does he stay there? That's probably going to depend on whether or not he plays well. And look, I think the one thing that you saw yesterday, Team USA has such a size advantage at every spot that when you put a center like AD or Bam who can switch and you can switch everything, they are almost impossible to score against on most nights. There will be individual matchups where Joel Embiid is probably more important, but I think there's probably a case where, especially with the way Joel Embiid's moving, which doesn't look like it's 100%. I don't know if that's because of the brace or because of the knee or just because of the fact that he's working himself in a condition. But the switching thing, I think, is going to help them on some nights, and there are going to be some matchups, not necessarily against South Sudan, because I think they'll beat them irrespective of who's starting at center, but where a more switching defense probably makes more sense.
Kyle sounds like he's saying Joel should sit his ass down. You aggregate that.
Number one, Joel Embiid hater, Derek Bodner. No, well, here's what I would say. Of course, the fact that Steph Curry, LeBron James, Anthony Davis, and Jason Tatum were all negative in yesterday's game. Right. No big headlines about that.
Nothing
it couldn't just be that Steph and LeBron aren't playing fucking dick for defense for this team and that they're playing matador defense and letting guys go by them. That couldn't be the reason that anybody's been negative, right? It's got to be all Joel's fault. No, listen. I just don't like the plus minus stuff was so overblown when it was Joel. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to overblow it. Wow, that's a real no diddy there. I'm not going to make more of a deal of it than needs to be made.
Right.
I think you can see that Joel has a harder time scaling into this sort of role as the big than certainly Bam, who they were wildly successful with Bam on the floor yesterday, but also to a lesser extent than Anthony Davis, who, by the way, has built-in years of chemistry with LeBron that makes it easy to just like, they don't even have to run plays. It's just like he goes and screens for LeBron and they do the pick and roll, surround him with shooters. The lob is there, great. If not, you can pass the ball to Steph Curry. So there's stuff that's just built in that works easier that way. That doesn't mean Anthony Davis is better. It means that it's been a little bit more seamless of a fit. To Derek's point, I think they can switch a lot more, which not with Steph Curry doesn't make a lot of sense because that's like the sneaky thing that I thought watching. I only watched part of the game yesterday because once it became clear Joel wasn't playing, it was my day off. I was like, I'm going to do something better with my time. From everything I saw, once they go to this switch lineup and you keep sort of that same group together, it's Hunt the Bozo and the clown is Steph Curry. Yep. So that's going to be a subplot to watch as they get deeper into this tournament and potentially play teams that are better set up to exploit it than South Sudan is.
Yep. I don't remember what the next game is, but they play somebody, and we'll be talking about it when they do. All right. Time on a Thursday.
Subscribe to the PHLY Sixers podcast for more great analysis like that.
They'll play somebody. Let's get to our roll call here on this Thursday as we wrap things up.
All right, everybody. Thank you, as always, for being here with us on a Thursday. I have a special surprise for you on Friday.
Friday, yes.
You got to be prepared for that. We're going to do something a little different tomorrow. I still got to work on it tonight, but we will get there. Before then, thank you to AC Phila, who, by the way, was saying I'm wearing dad socks. These are Nike socks, bro. Like they're Nike calf socks. I don't know. He saw me wearing white socks, so he's like,
I got white socks.
I don't know what.
I don't know.
I'm wearing them with sandals. They're slides, dude. This is like every athlete at every tournament you've ever seen.
Do you see our relaxing set?
Anyway, thank you to AC
Where are the
Phila.
slides, man?
Thank you to I Gavini, Martian Lynch.
What up, Martian?
Darkness.
Whoa.
He's
Thank you to
also
Winona.
pointing out that we're wearing our white pants today, Kyle.
Always.
With the white
Thank you to Money Mar, Bootzilla.
What up, Boots?
Eugene Ross, Valhos, Mr.
Hey,
Sandman.
Mr. Sandman.
Chris Jefferson
Bring me a dream.
in the building. Bai Chi, Jim G.
Jimmy G.
What
Jimmy Garoppolo, who you quarterbacking for this year?
Devon Givens in the chat. Who the hell is that guy?
I'm back to work.
You are back to work. We got Rick Morse in the building. Why do I always lose the scroll as I'm going up? I need
Provolone
super
John.
producer Provolone John
McKnight
is definitely in here. Spo Babby definitely in here. The Truth.
The Truth, not Paul Pierce.
No, Beanie Siegel.
That's right.
Rich P. Lego My Ego.
Lego My Ego.
Thank you guys for being here. If you have not already, John Strickland in the building.
What up, Johnny?
Hit the subscribe button, hit the bell icon so you get notifications each and every time we go live. hit the thumbs up button, and I'll have a fun surprise for you on Friday. Thank you, Bree. We'll see you everybody tomorrow.
See ya.
We all silly like the mayor.